Awesome. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the December OBPAC meeting. So I think we'll start off with our traditional introductions. I will hand it over to my co-chair. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Kathy Rigby, co-chair of OBPAC, and I'll hand it over to Dave. Introduce
I am,
himself.
I'm Dave Thompson. I am the other co-chair for OPAC and an at-large member. How about Mavis?
I'm Mavis Hartz. I'm in LeGrand. I am the business of the OPAC crew at this point, but I am soon to be replaced because this is my birthday and my last meeting.
Hi,
Happy
happy
birthday!
birthday.
Thank you.
Should we go for Emma next?
Okay, I'm Emma Newman. I am in Springfield, Oregon. Happy birthday, Mavis. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a non-voting member of OBPAC. I will pass it over to Carrie.
Hi, it's Carrie Roberson. I am in Portland, Oregon. I'm a community health specialist for Multnomah County Health Department, and I am the built environment specialist representative.
Thanks. How about Beth next?
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Beth Young. I am the planning / local government representative for on OPPAC. I don't know I came in late, so I don't know who hasn't spoken. So I don't know who's next.
I don't know if Nolan came in.
Yeah, so Nolan, he's entering the Zoom meeting, so he should join us here in just a second, and I do see him now. Nolan,
Okay.
we're doing introductions. Would you introduce yourself?
Hello. My name is, can you hear me? I think my internet might be bad actually. Okay. I'm Nolan. I am a student at the University of Oregon, and I'm originally from Portland, and I am the under 21 representative on the PAC board.
You and
Wonderful.
Andre, I think, is in. Hi, Andre. Do you want to introduce yourself? So we're just completing round of introductions. I think that's everyone. Andre is here, I believe.
I am sorry, having some audio difficulties. Hopefully you can hear me all right, though.
Yeah.
Sweet. Andre Lightsey Walker, use he, him pronouns. I'm based in Portland, Oregon, and OPPAC at-large member. Good to see everyone.
Does staff normally introduce themselves? I forgot. Yeah,
everyone.
Ian, do you want?
Sure. Yeah. Ian Davidson, he, him pronouns. I am the bicycle and pedestrian program manager within the public transportation division at ODOT. I'm one of the folks who staff you all at OPPAC. I'll pass it off to Roberto.
Thank you, Ian. Roberto Cotto. I also work for ODOT. I'm the active transportation program analyst, and in my role, I help support the OPAC and other advisory committees within PTD. Leanne?
Yeah, I'm the active transportation senior policy analyst here at ODOT. I get to work with Ian and Roberto and you guys, and I'm very excited to be here. I'll also be doing division updates later in the meeting.
Fantastic. And we have a couple of our presenters here. I know that Christy is with us. Christy, would you like to do an introduction?
Sure, sorry, and I'm not that familiar with Zoom, so wish me luck when it's time to present because I thought I was good to go on the Teams thing. So Christy Jordan, I manage the mobility program and just been doing that for quite a while. Worked for ODOT for actually I have 28 years in now, so just happy to be here and share any information, hopefully answer any questions. And yes, that's it.
Thank you, Christy. And there's a couple of other ODOT staff. You're welcome to give an introduction on the chat room. That should cover everyone. Turning it back to the co-chairs.
Hey, so we have some important meeting goals to cover today. So in addition to our regular briefings in today's meeting, we have 4 items that we're going to cover. The first is we're going to hear from ODOT Mobility Program. Those folks staff the Mobility Advisory Committee and the Stakeholder Forum. So these 2 groups have a pretty significant impact on ODOT's ability to have active transportation infrastructure. And so we're looking forward to hearing from them. And then we will hear an update on ODOT's implementation of the recommendations that came out of the 2024 audit. Audit on the active transportation. So after those folks, we will be able to discuss and decide on our recommendation for who we'd like to fill the upcoming vacancy in OBPAC for the bike business role. So sad to let Mavis go, but it's time and we get to select someone new. And then lastly, we will get a briefing on the Transportation Growth Management Program. That program is jointly managed by the DLCD, the Department of Land Conservation and Development and ODOT. So that's our overview of the meeting goals. We have a change in the agenda, so we'll be pulling someone forward on the Meet Your OBPAC member. We need to let Nolan go first on that, and we'll give him some time before he has to leave the meeting early for a class conflict. And we're also going to have Roberto sent out some dates for all of us for meetings for this upcoming year. So keep an eye out for those and let him know if there's any conflicts. Otherwise, he's going to go ahead and schedule those dates out for us and let us know. And then my last item message is that I needed to let the group know that I'm going to be stepping back, giving up my role as co-chair with OBPAC, effective at the end of this meeting. So I'll keep my co-chair role through the meeting to help facilitate, but I will be stepping off. I have many upcoming challenges to my schedule, one of which I'd like to let everybody know about is that I've joined Emerge Oregon, which is a group in Oregon that helps folks run for office. And so I'm hoping to be trained and learn lots of great information for my decision to run for an upcoming open county commission seat. So that's going to put quite a challenge on my schedule. And so I thought I'd give up the role and let someone else in the group step up and have that opportunity. But I've appreciated all of your support. In the brief amount of time I've had this role, but I certainly appreciate being on the committee and will keep participating as much as I can. So other than that, I think we will be turning the time over to Dave for public comment.
Yeah, I think Roberto is going to do the meeting etiquette.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, forgot about that.
No problem at all. Absolutely. So I'm going to share my screen here. Just a short reminder to folks joining us today that the meeting is being recorded and everything in the chat room will be recorded as well to comply with Oregon law, public meeting laws. So we ask for participants to just remain respectful and steer away from any obscene language. As well, that folks who have never used the Zoom meetings, you do have some features available to participants. We ask for folks who are not presenting or folks who are not part of the OBPAC committee to just mute yourself unless you're providing public comment once we get to the public comment section. Also, there is a feature to turn off your cameras. If bandwidth gets really bad, we will ask for people to turn off their cameras and ask for the OBPAC members to remain with their cameras on. And if you need to rename yourself, you're also able to do that within the participants window. Once we get to the public comment section, just a reminder that we have very limited time, so we ask for folks to just uh, raise their hand or put in the chat room if you're interested in providing public comment. That will be limited to up to 3 minutes, and folks are welcome to also email us for any public comment they wish to submit in writing. Okay, so that covers code of conduct, and I will pass it back to you, Dave.
Hey, thank you, Roberto. So now is our time for public comment. Is there anyone on the meeting who would like to make a public comment at this time? I do not see anyone. We did receive one written public comment, which is available in the meeting packet for people to review. So at this point, not seeing any discussion on that, we will move on to meeting minutes. Kathy.
Yes, so we have meeting minutes from our July meeting. Were there any issues or adjustments that needed to be made to those? And if not, would someone like to make a motion to approve those meeting minutes?
I move we
I would
approve the July meeting minutes.
And
Thank you,
I
Dave.
second.
A second by Mavis, thank you. Should we all thumbs up it? Okay. Roberto, do you have that? That's unanimous.
Fantastic. That is
Thank you.
unanimous. And I did see Dell earlier on. Oh, fantastic. He's still
There he
here
is.
with us. And that means we also have quorum. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Dal, do you want to quickly jump in and introduce yourself?
Hi, Del Schaffenberg, from Milwaukee, Oregon. I'm a longtime cyclist and runner, and use the Oregon roads a lot for biking and running and exercise and transportation, and so it's a good fit for this.
Thank you, Dale. So we mentioned earlier that we needed to move up an item, so we'll have our OBPAC member section here. And so we're going to get a chance to hear from Nolan today, who's going to tell us about himself.
Hello. Nice to see everyone. I don't know, are you sharing upon my behalf, Roberto, or Ian, whoever is you are sharing it? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me go ahead and pull that presentation. And you should be able to see it now at your end, Nolan. Just let me know when you want me to move to the next
Yeah,
slide.
and I have a exact end time I have to be at. Not that I don't think I'm not going to take forever, but just if there was someone else.
10 minutes should be good.
Okay. So hello everyone, my name is Nolan Poole. I've met a lot of you in person. It's been a pleasure to do so. Sad to hear about you stepping down, Kat. You've been great to have, but it was nice to have you while we did. So anyway, yeah, it's a picture of me. You can go to the next slide. So I'm originally from Portland. I grew up there my whole life in the same house. And then I am now a senior in university. So the last 4 years I've been living in Eugene, Oregon, for attending the University of Oregon. And then honestly, I gotta say, I've lived here my whole life. I've seen all of Oregon. My whole family's around the Santiam Valley. So I know the area between Salem and Bend very well. And and my family now lives all around the state along the coast. And so I'm glad I get to see this whole beautiful state all the time and get to see you guys and go on trips with you. And it's just amazing. Um, so yeah, Everett, you want to go to the next slide? Uh, so this, in high school, this was all my friends from high school. They were all very lovely. I don't know if you guys ever remember or even knew about the whole thing where you'd go to see the Minions movie in Suits. My whole friend group did that, and that's us in the movie theater bathroom wearing suits. And they're just awesome, supportive friend group. They're really um, and I'm really happy that I got to meet them. And I'm still really close with all of them, which is really nice. But now they all live around the country going to different universities. And then on the right here, we have the most intense game of Ticket to Ride I've ever played, where my friend Mike is actually standing on a chair because it was so intense. I don't know if any of you have ever played it before, but you're making trains. So that's just another part of my love for public transport and, everything like that. So then, next slide, please. After high school, I came to the University of Oregon. There's a photo of my first football game in the middle there, which was just last week, actually. I've never really been that big of a fan of football, but I caught a t-shirt and I got on the Jumbotron 6 times, which is like amazing for a first game, I thought. And then on the left, that's my roommate Max, and I've lived with him for 4 years, and he's also one of my closest friends, and he really inspires me because we have a lot of differing opinions and we're both stubborn. So I've learned a lot of conflict resolution things with him, but we still get along really well. And I think that's really helped me in other things. Um, and then in the bottom right, that's my whole friend group that I've known since freshman year and my girlfriend in the top right. And these are just, more people that are really supporting me and I really appreciate them. And of course, they bring very important perspectives to my life because they're also from all around the world. So yeah. And then next slide, please. This is what I think is probably my most important perspective for this board is that I am a very large biking enthusiast, especially when it comes to the Eugene Peace Health bike share system. I've used it since my freshman year and I use it extensively every day. And so, all of I forget what it's called, but the entire waterfront park here is just absolutely beautiful. And I'd love to see that come to more Oregon cities because I just enjoy it so much. And I know so many people that love it. And then I have pictures of some of my friends that I go on bike rides with. And I've gotten other people into biking through the Peace Health bikes, which I think is just amazing. So it's not like you have to have an extra bike laying around to be like, oh, do you want to go on a bike ride with me? It's like, oh, no, I can just rent one out for my buddy and we can try it out. And it really lowers that barrier to entry. So next slide, please. I think this is, yeah, and this is my other perspective of biking in other places. In the top right, that's at the Grand Canyon where I did a lot of biking, although I never actually got a picture of the bike I used. So there's just a picture of me at the Grand Canyon. And then in the bottom right is me with a man named Ronald. He is from the Dutch city of Utrecht, and he actually was a guest presenter for a class I took freshman year. And then he's just an amazing person. The next summer, I was going to Europe and I just texted him out of nowhere and I said, would you take me in for a little bit? And he took me all around his city of Utrecht, where he's actually a city planner and he's really involved with, of course, all the biking that goes along there. And so there were all these little things in their city that just added up to make an absolutely incredible biking experience. And it was so fun to go around with him the whole day and just bike with him. And so on the left there, that's the bike that he lent me for that. And behind it is, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, it's a school next to a river. And they actually put a bike bridge on top of the school because it was the only place that it could go to. And it's this really weird piece of infrastructure, but really cool. And then down in the bottom, I have car dependency propaganda, which something I found in one of my classes, and I just thought it was really fun. I thought I'd share it with everyone. So next slide, please. And then, oh yeah, that's the other thing. I'm not, I'm a 3 PM or a public policy planning and management minor, but I'm actually a chemistry major. Just, I kind of fell into this on a weird, yes, it was Mark Schlossberg's class. I think it was a really amazing class. And I knew him through Mark Schlossberg. Um, Anyway, but yeah, I'm actually a chemistry major, which is totally different from all the stuff I've learned in all my city planning classes and stuff. And I'm actually in my chemistry lab right now. I don't know if you can see all of the tubing and venting on the ceiling. But on my left, I have my absolutely wonderful GE that has taught me basically everything I know. And then some experiments with pretty colors and my very close lab mates. And then on the right is a picture of me and my organic chemistry partner. And we just get along so well that I love all these people and they're so supportive. And they've taught me so much, not just about chemistry, but just how to think about things critically and in a difficult manner. So next slide, please. I think I might have, oh yes, some of my hobbies. I do golfing, as you can see on the left. I actually have no photos of me golfing either. And then my roommate Max that I talked about earlier got me really into badminton. And so I've actually won 3 badminton tournaments, which at the University of Oregon, which is just awesome. And we have a super, super inviting, welcoming club up here on the right that I just adore all the people in it and how inviting it is compared to other club sports. And then in high school, I did a lot of bowling. So I have a picture of me with my best friend from high school at a bowling alley. And then I have some other hobbies on the next few pages if you want to keep going. Oh, the great outdoors, of course. I love part of the reason I like biking so much is just because it's so good or better for the environment than other forms of transportation. And, Oregon's just naturally has beautiful nature. And so I want to protect that. So, I've done fishing a few times. That's just incredible. And then the hikes around Oregon, especially, I really like Silver Falls and Angels Rest Pass, and that was just incredible. And then I have a little snowman I made here in the city of Eugene and a beautiful river that's actually in California and Black Butte, which is much closer to Dave's territory. Oh, I guess Dave has moved actually, so not your territory anymore. But yeah, I think I have more. Yeah. And then I also I'm not anymore because I got too busy, but I was part of the University of Oregon esports team. And so I have a picture of my teammates there in the middle. And they were also just an amazing group of people, helping with figuring out just how to do really good coordinated group work, really. But I just, there's all sorts of pieces of my life, and I'm really happy I've met all the people I've met, including all of you guys. I don't know if I have any other slides. Oh, yes. I also travel other places besides just the Netherlands. I have Paris and Spain here, and then I think that's a cafe in Brussels in the top right. And I think those are also just really important perspectives to have of just different countries and what other people do, because different systems result in different results, and so it's good to see what other people are up to. And I think that's the last slide, maybe. Is it? Oh, I also this is my other hobby. I really like food. So this is some of the food I've made. That was a little chocolate cake, and then below that is a salmon fillet that was probably one of the best things I've ever had. And then a green bean casserole I made for this Thanksgiving. And just some of my favorite foods of all time. That was on the very top right. That is the hot dog I had before my first football game this past 2 weekends ago. And of course, you got to have your root beer float on the left. And maybe that's the last slide. Sorry, I did not realize this was so fun.
Not a problem. I'll just pause it here just so that we stay on track with time. But thank you so much, Nolan, for sharing.
No problem. Well, thank you for the opportunity of letting me share. I hope I get to know all of you guys as well. well, I kind of already know all of you, but better.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Nolan. That was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if there's any questions, but or we're out of time, really. Also, I saw your text, Emma. I just didn't have time to read it while I was talking.
You did great. Just commentary.
I'm just
Thank
glad I
you.
didn't have to follow you, Nolan, with mine because that was great.
Well, thank you.
I think
Okay,
the bar's been raised, definitely.
Oh,
that's right.
I tried
Whoever's
very
next,
hard.
you're in big trouble. Okay,
Thank you.
so the next item on our agenda today is an overview of ODOT's mobility program. There's been, I think, quite a few changes on that since the last time the committee has had an update. And so today we have Christy Johnson and Oscar and Juju. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I hope I was close.
You got it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I was like, whoever said I'm in trouble because I'm up next, I'm like, great. And just FYI, I went again, I'm not used to using Zoom, so I didn't, it gave my ODOT number. So I think somebody maybe fixed my name, but it's Christy Jordan, just so you guys know. And I was going to try to fix it, but then I was like, no, I'm not going to try. I'll mess it up. So thank you for having us here to talk. We put together a presentation and hopefully it will, hopefully by the time I get through it, it'll answer some questions if there's anything, you know, that you've been wondering about. Hopefully it'll address some. And then if not, I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards. And Oscar is my manager. And so he's gonna watch me have fun and then I'm sure jump in wherever he can. Now, so the only thing, so with Zoom, sharing your screen, how do you do that for a presentation?
Yeah, I have the PDF of your slides. I'm happy to share those. Just let me know to
Sure.
advance whenever I need to advance.
Okay, that'd be fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, Oscar and I are here to share some updates. So some of the things we're going to go over is, you know, basically an overview of the mobility program. I know you guys are interested in just kind of knowing a little bit more about just kind of the basics of what we do. And then also understanding a little bit more about the MAC, Mobility Advisory Committee, and the Stakeholder Forum. And then we're going to share some of our program stats that kind of talks about the things that we do and gives you some numbers there. We're going to go over the Secretary of State audit and what was recommended and what we've implemented. And then we're going to go over the most recent internal ODOT audit that we had. So we'll go over those findings with you there and then open it up to questions and answers. And if I'm happy to stop and answer any questions. If you have something, like if you didn't want me to move past something, feel free, but otherwise I'll just plan on answering them at the end. And next slide. And again. Okay, so the ODOT Mobility Services team is my team. It's a small team, very small team. I was over at the Motor Carrier Transportation CCD now, but mobility and the Overdimension Permit program used to be together, and then it split, and then we moved over to the statewide project delivery branch, which is under Delivery and Operations. Statewide delivery branch is managed by David Kim. I know some of you know him. And we've got the project development section and programs development office and then statewide mobility program. So we really have three people that work under me. We've got our operations coordinator, that's Katie Scott. She facilitates the MAC meetings and does, you know, policy updates, just attends a lot of different meetings and things like that. We have our program analyst, Manny Boswell. He does the major portion of reviewing projects that are shared through email. A lot of people, kind of just think that because they wouldn't know this, but think that we are sharing all of the projects that we review at a MAC meeting and sharing them with the MAC stakeholders. But really, that's not the case. There's actually quite a bit of projects, most of them that are reviewed internally, and then they're either not shared at all, and I'm just being recommended to sign off on a checklist, or they're being shared through email. So it's only the high impact projects that will come to a mobility meeting. So Manny does all of the ones that are going to be the moderate impacts that are going to be shared through email, or low impacts that aren't shared. Bill Gross is our content coordinator. He does all of our training. A few of the people like Emma and Leanne have worked with Bill. He facilitated our MAC charter task force that we had, and so he also coordinates the Safety and Mobility Advisory Policy Committee, does our web stuff, just a lot of different hats that he wears. And next slide. So again, responsibilities, and I've kind of touched on that a big portion of what we do are the project reviews. So there's, we review projects that have temporary impacts, and we review projects that have permanent impacts. And the temporary impacts require that I sign off on a mobility considerations checklist, and that requires, stakeholder engagement and whatnot. So there's a lot of projects that we review, and again, make a decision whether they're going to be shared, not shared through email, or go to a MAC meeting. We are the single point of contact between ODOT and the MAC stakeholders. So, anybody that's kind of communicating, sharing information with us, then we're passing it along to them. And we're kind of trying to help a lot with the engineering kind of language and things like that, and trying to help the project teams put together presentations for all of the members of the MAC that is not so engineering, can make kind of be easier to understand, and make sure that it kind of is addressing all of the questions that the different stakeholders are going to want to know. Again, the meeting facilitation, I talked about that. Record keeping, we are required for the projects that are permanent, that are subject to 366-215. We are required to memorialize those. We issue documents called records of supports, and we're required by rule to publish those on a website for 10 years. So it's longer than most other things. But when we went through the rulemaking process in 2013, that was one of the outcomes, is that we would do that. And again, training and subject matter experts for mobility. And next slide, please. Okay, so the Mobility Advisory Committee, basically their responsibility, and it's spelled out in our charter, is to review and provide feedback on projects, through the lens of mobility and work zone safety. We have a charter that was established and defines roles and responsibilities. And then we have project review criteria that we use that helps us make those decisions that I was talking about before, of whether it needs to be shared or not, and how it should be shared. The advisory committee consists of members that are, from the automobile users. It's going to have contractors like AGC or the pavements folks, bike and ped, which we'll talk about. We're always trying and encouraging membership from bike and ped folks. includes trucking industry, and includes oversized loads, and it includes mobile home, the Mobile Home Association folks as well. And next slide. So just a little brief history, and then we'll go a little bit more into the MAC, because it does get a little bit confusing because of the stakeholder forum and the MAC. So I'm going to do my best to try to explain that. But just a little bit of history, for the MAC is basically, the program was created in 2005, 2006. And as far as the meetings go, they were ad hoc meetings. Initially, they started out as mobility steering committee. So these members that you see now that participate, they were originally part of the steering committee. And then it evolved as we tried to resolve issues and things that came up, especially during the OTIA bridge times when all the construction was going on. We tried to resolve problems quickly, as we had placeholders every Wednesday to be able to have a meeting and try to resolve things there. They were facilitated by MCD staff, which is us now. We were at MCT, we're over here now, but we were the ones that facilitated them and included the same members that we basically just said. The only differences is we added the contractors, the AGC and the APAO, in 2015 as part of the work zone safety executive committee that Matt Garrett used to facilitate. So, and then the meetings were intended to meet, engagement commitments by ODOT to seek advice from industry on impacts to mobility. So that was in the original Highway Operations Mobility Manual, used to be called the HIMOM, and has continued that engagement, and the collaboration is a big part of what which is different. And I understand, from other committees, it is a different way to go. But that's been the purpose of it. The directives and policies were established that required the regions, again, to collaborate with industry from planning through construction. And yeah, and then next slide, please. Okay, so the stakeholder forum history. So in 2017, and just FYI, I haven't always been in mobility, but I have been in it for long enough, both in OD. So, and I really started doing mobility in 2007. So I have been through the rulemaking process when we went through the rulemaking process for 366-215. So I definitely can answer questions if you guys have any of those later. But basically in 2013, we adopted a rule that would help us implement 366-215, because it's pretty, when you look at the statute, it's pretty vague. It's pretty simple. It doesn't provide a lot of, what is a freight route, and what do all these things mean. So that's what the rule was intended to do, is to kind of explain more of that. It defined terms. It identified a review process, and for facilitating communication consensus. It established that a stakeholder forum would advise the agency on proposed reductions in vehicle carrying capacity. And, the interesting part about that, which I'll show you a little bit when we go through the MAC, is when it established the stakeholder forum, it said that you will invite at a minimum folks from the automobile, the trucking, so all of the exact same people who were already participating on the MAC. So those same groups of people, although we weren't having people participate, I will say that, with Bike and Ped, we weren't able to do that. And so that was we tried, I can tell you that, but we just didn't have the contacts and we weren't able to do that. But that's what was good about the rulemaking process, and even me being involved in that, because I got to meet a lot of people that participated in that group. And then we set up a different system. for trying to notify people about projects and get them to be engaged. So the motor carrier began inviting the bike ped, which I'll just say mobility, interested parties to participate in the forum discussions. And we did that through, first of all, with all the people that were involved, having them share all the information. Then we set up a Gov space, and we sent out Gov delivery notices, which we still do, so that people can sign up and attend the meetings that they're interested in. And I think I might actually have a slide on that, so I'm probably getting ahead of myself. This is just a little snapshot of what the rule says, and a definition of the stakeholder forum. So when the formal MAC charter was adopted in 2022, bike and ped representatives were added to the regular committee membership, and that was through working with Jessica. She helped us get a couple of members to get them involved, and we got them added. So that was great at the time. And next slide. Okay, so really the differences between the MAC and stakeholder forum is that the stakeholder forum, is they're weighing in on projects that are subject to 366-215 specifically. So, and the MAC is weighing in on all the other projects. So projects that involve temporary work zone impacts, and projects that involve permanent impacts, but are not subject to 366 because it's not on an identified freight route. So that's the big difference. We have set up, so when we did the charter, because we just used to call it the committee, so when we set up the charter and we laid out the differences between the MAC and the stakeholder forum and everything, we also have structured our meetings that way. So at the beginning of each meeting, we start out with the 366-215 stakeholder forum projects, and we actually do a separate recording for those meetings. For that portion of the meeting, we take a break when that portion of the meeting is over with the 366, and then we move on to the other projects, starting the recording again. So this way, if there's somebody that is on the stakeholder forum, that is also going to be weighing in on the other projects, that's great. But if they just want to weigh in on the 366, they can just leave at that point. Typically people don't do that, but that it's available for them to do that as needed. And then both of them, I just kind of want to be transparent and clear here because it's the thing that's a little bit confusing. If anybody, attends a MAC meeting and sees the participation, the thing that I do want to point out is that whoever is on the committee and is identified as a committee member, whether that's a bike, mobile home person, an oversized load, that person is called a MAC member during the MAC portion, and they are called a stakeholder forum member but it's the same person. So it's the same person. So I just kind of wanted it can be confusing. It's the same person. Now, doesn't mean that we couldn't have, if somebody else wanted to join as a stakeholder forum member only, or to there's no reason why we couldn't do that. The membership is open. It's defined that way in rule. It's an open membership. So, but I just did want to highlight that if that ever seems confusing to you. And then the next slide. So again, I've talked about this, that the MAC is looking at the temporary work zone impacts, which is going to include things that are going to cause temporary restrictions, like width restrictions, height restrictions. There's going to be road and ramp closures. There's going to be detours, diversions. We have routes that are identified as critical route pairs, meaning that you need to be able to keep one open while another's closed. So there's a lot of conversations about that. And work zone safety is a big part of that. Then we have permanent impacts not subject to 366. It's going to be, things that we have policies and procedures in place for ODOT to engage with the stakeholders. So it's going to be like permanent weight restrictions, roundabouts. So roundabouts that aren't on a 366-215 are still subject to engagement with the stakeholders to ensure that the roundabout is properly sized. And that's a specific directive that says that. And then we've got, anytime there's going to be just like on a 366 route, but anytime there's going to be vertical or horizontal, impacts, that's going to be something that we're going to talk about. And it's going to have it doesn't have the same process if the MAC doesn't like it or doesn't support it. It doesn't have the same process that the 366 does for escalating it, elevating it or anything like that. And it's up to ODOT, because the MAC is advisory, to proceed in any way that they wish. The one thing is that I want to point out is we do talk about them because the oversized loads and trucks use a lot of the routes. So we have the 366 routes, but really all of the routes allow, many of the routes allow annual permits to move, and they allow single trip permits to move. And so it's good to have those conversations to make sure that what is going to be taking place isn't going to impact, commerce or anything like that, which is why we talk about that. And then roadway reconfigurations, we talk about that for transparency reasons. Again, just like I said before, the MAC is advisory, and it's up to the regions to listen to all of the input given from all of the stakeholders, and it's up to the region to proceed and how they want to go. But again, the reason we talk about them is that there that there could be something that could impact the size of loads. So if a route is allowing, certain size loads to go through, and something is going to happen that's going to reduce that, then it's just something that we want to talk about and make sure that there aren't any issues. And I got some stats kind of show you about how that's been going. So, and then the stakeholder forum, like again, permanent impacts subject to 366-215. So doing all of the safety features that I'm sure you guys are all used to talking about, as far as, raised medians, traffic separators, bulb outs, traffic signal signposts, all of that is involved there. And next slide. So I know this has come up, in discussions about how to become a MAC member, and I'm sure it is kind of surprising to people, especially there's a lot of committees at ODOT, and we are a little bit different. So I will say that right now, and I will agree with that. The thing is we went through a rulemaking process with multiple stakeholders, and when it was all said and done, the way the rules defined is membership is open. So there isn't a limit. There's no term limits. There's no like, oh, you can only have this many people here or that many people there, or it really is open. So if somebody wanted to become a member, they just need to reach out to us, reach out to me. And I mean, pretty much what we do is we go through an onboarding process, and we go over all the policies and procedures and the things that a member would be, looking at when they're looking at projects, so that they can understand what they're weighing in on or supporting. And so that's just something to keep in mind. I'm happy if you have a recommendation or anything, we're happy to talk about that and get somebody on board. I know Ian's recently recommended somebody, and we're working through that process right now. Oh, is it going to be you, Dave? I missed that somehow.
Yep, actually, I just responded to Bill's latest email, working
Excellent.
on getting things scheduled. So,
Okay, yeah, Bill's taking care of it for us, so I missed that. Well, that's fantastic, and glad to have you aboard. That'll be great. Um, okay, so then again, we're going to be doing the onboarding, and then MAC members who qualify can also participate in ODOT's equitable engagement compensation program. And so we do have one member that is doing that right now. So we're all set up for that. We have forms and whatnot that we send. And if you qualify, then you can, you can participate in that program. So next slide, please. Okay, so the MAC and stakeholder forum advisory role. So again, kind of hitting on the point that the MAC and stakeholder forum advise the agency on its designs. Design decisions are made by ODOT though. So throughout our mobility manual, the original one, our second updated one, and we just updated the manual again. It's always been throughout the mobility manual that the stakeholders, whoever they are, can ask, hey, is it possible to do this? Would it work better if we, and that is definitely something that we'll collaborate with on. So again, it is a little bit different, but in the end, the MAC is advisory, and it is ultimately up to the region and to ODOT how they proceed with their designs. So the MAC cannot delay, stop, or block projects, and I know that is a perception, and hopefully that I'll help kind of put that aside a little bit with the internal audit that we had that came out, and I think that shows us some good things in regards to that. So but they can't do that. It's up to ODOT again, like I said, to decide how they're going to proceed. It is a common misconception that ODOT cannot move forward with projects without approval from the MAC. So again, further in the discussion, we'll go ahead and talk about that. And next slide, please. Okay, so here's a little bit data before we get into the audits that I'll share with you. Next slide. Okay, so this is just an overall diagram of the projects that we review, and the big thing to highlight is, like I mentioned before, we're reviewing a big portion of the projects that we review are actually the temporary work zone impacts that happen during construction. And then about 25% of them are the projects that are subject to 366-215, and about 1% are projects that are that are permanent, that are not subject to 366-215. So, and I don't know if I'm missing, because it's hard for me, like, you guys want, if anybody here feels like they want to stop me with a question, just yell at me, and I'm happy to do so. But anyways, next slide. So I'm going to share a little bit of the roadway reconfiguration data, just because I definitely know that is like a hot topic with us, with the MAC meetings. It's sometimes a difficult conversation because, we just have stakeholders with conflicting interests. I mean, it just is what it is. And that's even in regards to the contractors, the AGC and the pavements folks, in terms of the way they're looking at things versus the way freight is looking at things. And that said, we've always been able to have pretty good conversations, and again, even with the contractors. And so I'll share some data, but I did just want to throw that out. It is just there's different interest. And so I guess the big thing I'll say is we document all of the feedback and input from all of the parties, and we give that to the regions. And even if you only have, the other thing I want to show, it's not a vote, so we're not counting, oh, 5 people liked it this way and 3 people liked it this way and and so we're not going, okay, 5 win or 4. That's not how it works, actually. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not a vote. It's literally we're taking a poll, like on feedback. And I will also say that roadway reconfigurations, they can be part of a project. Oftentimes they are part of a project that also has things that are subject to 366-215. So it's part of the scope of the project. And so, we're talking about those, for that reasons. And then sometimes they're not. But anyways, I do understand that it could be a bit of a hot topic. So we'll just kind of get into the stats here. Next slide. Okay, so roadway reconfiguration. So of all of the projects that we reviewed, like 95% of them did not include roadway reconfigurations. 5% of them did. So if we go to the next slide, we will see that. So of those 17 projects that we reviewed, 6 of them were like early communication. Like oftentimes people will come and they'll say, we're thinking about these concepts, we're going to come back to you, are there any that you prefer, talking about alternatives, things like that. So 6 of those were that. And these stats, by the way, are snapshot in time of the meeting, of what was shared and what the outcome of that meeting was. So 8 of the projects were supported, so 47%, and 3 were not supported. So next, let's look at the 3 that weren't supported on the next slide. And I'm sorry, I should have said this is going from data from January of 2023 through November of 2025. But of these 3 projects that were not supported by the MAC, one of them, that very first one, the Oregon 47 project, the MAC just asked for, one of the stakeholders asked for a little bit more time, but the next day they gave their support. So that was closed up. 2 of the projects, the MAC asked for if they could make some changes, like, we don't support this right now, but could you make some changes, do this or that? And so ODOT did go look, and ODOT came back and said, yeah, no, we think we're going to, no, we're not, we don't think we're going to proceed with our design as originally intended. And so just wanted to highlight, I know sometimes the perception is that like the SMAC's like always getting in their way or whatever, but I think there's a lot of compromise in all of these projects for everybody. So I did just want to highlight that there were 2 projects there that ODOT proceeded ahead with, and regardless of the fact that the MAC did not support them. One of them, I also wanted to just kind of highlight, the bottom one, the US 30 Columbia. We did implement, sometime after the charter, we implemented just kind of like a new way of taking our polls and making sure that we clarify when we're taking our polls for 366-215, that we're separating the other features out from the permanent. So when Katie is facilitating the meeting, she's taking her polls, she's being very clear to say, in regards to the, raised median islands, do you support the 366? And then separately, do you have any feedback, concerns, anything that we should share regarding the roadway reconfiguration? So those are that is being separated out now. So I wanted to highlight that. And next slide. Okay, so let's see here, roadway. Okay, so another thing that we did is we were on a task force for roadway reconfigurations that Mike Kimlinger led, and during that time, there was I think it might have been OTA that had wanted to get some data about how just some data about how the roadway reconfigurations had been going, what the data was since the BUD had been implemented, and that has been incorporated into the highway design manual now. But so we went back a little bit further and we looked at data from 2017 through December 2023, and it's pretty similar as far as like the stats go. But so for this first one, again, it's 5%. So even though there's more projects and there was 28 reviewed, it's still in the 5% range. And can you go to the next slide, please? And then of these activities, 21 of them were supported. 5 of them were early communication, and 2 of them were no's. And so of these 2, there was Oregon 40. So there's a couple of projects, Oregon 42, and I will say we had these showing on our stats actually as that the region still needed to follow up with us. And what we actually found out is that it looks like maybe they weren't followed back up on. However, they did get implemented. So even though they weren't necessarily supported, again, these were other projects that were implemented. So, and the next slide, please. So another question that comes up a lot is, or not a lot, but it's come up is, well, you know, it's fine to say like, oh, there's a certain amount of projects that were supported, but that doesn't really reflect whether or not more work had to be done. So were there any changes that had to be made? You know, did the MAC ask for changes, and were those changes made? So so of those projects here, of the 28 projects, it looks like there was 19 of them that the MAC asked for some sort of change. You know, whether it was, you know, can you do, instead of doing 2 11-foot lanes, can you do 1 12-foot lane and 1 11-foot lane? Whatever the change was, there was some sort of change. And there were 9 of the projects that didn't ask for changes at all. And then, so were those changes implemented? It looks like of the ones that they did ask for changes on, 7 of them did not get made. 4 of them, ODOT did make the changes as requested, and 2 of them, they made changes, but with modifications. So I like to think of that as there was a compromise of some sort made with that one. So they did make some change, but not exactly what they wanted, but it was some sort of change. And then again, it talks about the 2 projects that need to follow up, and that's back to the Oregon 42 projects. And next slide, please. Okay, yay. Done with stats. So moving on to the Secretary of State audit. Next slide, please. So so in 2020, we received a Secretary of State audit. So the audit reviewed ODOT's project development process for traffic control, mobility, and work zone safety. So they provided 10 recommendations for improvements, and 7 of them pertain to the mobility program. And those are the ones I'm going to talk about. The 3 that were for the engineering side, I'm not going to go over, but these ones I'll share with you. And then ODOT agreed with the recommendations and responded to each. And so we'll go through what we ended up doing on those. Next slide. Okay, so so one of the recommendations was to create a charter for the Mobility Advisory Committee. We did not have one at that time. Clarify its role in project delivery, level of responsibility, and standard voting procedures. I do want to preface this one right here is the voting. We've never voted ever. And the rulemaking actually talked about just garnering consensus. And so that was kind of a confusion on this part. But I will say we do take a poll and we do document everybody's support without or support with reservations or no support, that sort of thing. So and we describe that in the charter. So the MAC charter, we have a body and we have 4 appendices. And so the appendices include, definitions, standards, and resources. It has a table of authorities, like all of the policies and directives and different things that we use when reviewing projects and whatnot. Criteria, which you'll see is another audit recommendation that we ended up doing the criteria, creating and including it in the charter, and then meeting guidelines that kind of address some of the other things. And the charter committee members included representatives from bike, pedestrians, freight, auto, contractors, as well as ODOT project delivery and engineering staff. And so this was implemented and published on February 11th, 2022. And next slide. Okay, so the recommendation here is once the charter is created, review the Mobility Advisory Committee and Stakeholder Forum membership and perform outreach to ensure that the needs of diverse stakeholder groups are sufficiently represented during project delivery review. So we reviewed the MAC and Stakeholder Forum membership during the charter development and made updates to ensure all members were included in both groups. And kind of those charts I showed you before, the slide that showed the MAC and Stakeholder Forum. Like when we added the AGC and the contractors to the MAC in 2015, they weren't identified as stakeholder forum. So we've identified them when we're going and we're taking polls, we are having them be part of that. The other thing we did is that we added like, I'm trying to think, did we add the local metropolitan to the other? Basically, we took the 2 groups and we matched them. So, and as like I described, they are acting that, it's the same member that's doing the same thing. So we matched those up. We also worked with Jessica Horning to identify local bike pedestrian representatives to participate in the meetings. And this provided us 2 new members, and that was like really appreciated. We, again, like we have a document called 366-215 implementation guide, and it's always been the case that the mobility program invites all of the statewide representatives, but we don't have the contacts for the local for each of these projects and each of the locals. So we rely on the project teams and we rely on the region mobility liaisons to provide us. So we're really asking them a lot, overemphasizing that now. Like, do you have anybody, a local representative that you want us to invite to the meeting? And we're making sure that we do that often. And unfortunately, the 2 members that Jessica did have give us, they represented for a while, and unfortunately they stopped participating. And since then we have gotten another person on to represent Bike and Ped. Now we're gonna have somebody else. That's gonna be great. But just to let you know there, I did say that we're leaving, and okay, so.
Hey, Christy.
Yeah.
Christy, this is Dave. So we need to, we're running out of time here for your presentation.
Oh, sorry.
So,
sure.
And I see at least one question, so
Sure.
maybe we can move on to do some questions if people have questions.
Happy to, yes, answer questions. Yes.
So Beth, you've got your hand up there.
All right. So why do we only have one member going to be?
So, like I said, I've been part of this committee for part of the program for a long time. It's not from a lack of trying to get people. So, for instance, like in 2013, when I was part of the rulemaking process, and we had everybody was excited, and the people that were from the bike were going to attend, and we did the gov space. All I can tell you is after we did that and we implemented everything, not one person showed up. And so again, we don't have the contacts. We work with the region mobility liaisons. We work with the project teams and stuff to try to get them to have local. But as far as having a permanent member, we have tried. We used Jessica to help. Actually, Bill and I, even before we got the community options person to attend, we reached out to a couple of other groups. And I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I've definitely were encouraged, and we encourage people to attend, but I can't make people attend. So I'm welcome to any sort of suggestions, or because I've been doing this for a long time. I'm really not sure how it stayed. I was really, really surprised actually after the rulemaking, because when we went through the rulemaking, people felt like there were like secret meetings happening, and it only involved the freight folks, and they didn't know that we were having like Lincoln City commissioners, people like that attend, because it just wasn't as transparent. But it's definitely transparent. I was really excited at that time, and I thought, man, for sure we're like these people that attended all this rulemaking, but it didn't. I just don't know how to. So I am welcome to any feedback that you guys might have on that, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and if we can move on to our next subject, unless there's a pressing question. Our next item on the agenda is an update on the active transportation.
Can I just throw out there 1 second?
Sure.
Ian, can you maybe, I didn't realize how close I was on time, but the one thing, can you just share the presentation or whatnot with this group? Because the Secretary of State audit, I think, is going to answer a lot of questions as far as like the MAC holding up projects or anything like that. We got a really good review. They looked at all the projects. So that would be really great. And if you guys want to email me anytime or have questions, feel free.
And for what it's worth, I would be happy to do my presentation on the audit at a different time. I think this is a golden opportunity if you all want to hear more from Christy and Oscar about the mobility program. It's up to you all, but I'd be happy to present at a different time if you all think that it would be a better time to be spent learning more about the mobility program.
Couple things, since I still have my audio on, which I will turn off in a second. Mavis had something to say, and also I'd like to hear from Emma on what she thought of the presentation and where we can go from here.
You want to ask your question, Mavis?
Oh, I was also going to kind of put Emma on the spot, but I know that from my angle, I know that people have attended the MAC and they have felt very uncomfortable. And that is why they have not continued to attend, is because they felt they were kind of put in the crosshairs and not necessarily they weren't comfortable. And if somebody's not comfortable, they're not going to attend a forum. But
yeah,
I think Emma probably has some more insight than I've got. So I know we're running out of time, so go, Emma.
Appreciate you speaking to that, Mavis. Really appreciate the work that Mobility has done from where it was in 2020 with the Secretary of State audit to where it is now. I see a lot of progress. There are still a number of things that prickle my ear and are like, wait, how does that work? With the membership specifically, my recollection was Mavis and I served on the Charter Development Work Group. OBPAC reached out to folks and chose to appoint Nick Meltzer and Bob Junedef as the bike and pedestrian representatives on the Mobility Advisory Committee. I was under the impression, Mavis and I were also alternates for each of them. Then we got to a point where we heard back from Bob and Nick. They had been serving on the committee for over a year. And through some conversation, they said, it's not really worthwhile. We don't have equal power or weight at the table. Doesn't seem like a valuable use of time. Once things get cleaned up and things are operating better over there, let's choose to re-engage. But it was an intentional, yep, they're stepping down and we're not going to reappoint them. I think part of the reason why it's not been refilled is I think that I had the understanding that OBPAC was going to have some sort of role in future appointments for the bicycle representative and the pedestrian representative. I think that kind of fell by the wayside or didn't get formalized.
I can help with that, yeah.
So things fell apart with that, but that's a little bit more context of what I understand with the history of the bicycle and the pedestrian representative membership over the last like 5-ish years, whenever the charter process was wrapping up. I think that, having meeting minutes posted to the website, those are looking good. That was not happening prior to the Secretary of State audit. There wasn't the level of transparency that there is today. A couple things that prickled my interest were understanding a little bit more with the stats, if those are just projects that are coming to a meeting. And then at the beginning of the presentation, you said, most projects are reviewed internally and either not shared at all or shared through email.
Right.
And so I'm curious if that's shared through email just within ODOT staff who are reviewing engineering design, or if there's any sharing to committee members and kind of like an online, but outside of the public eye decision making that's happening.
Okay, I can help you with a number of these. I'll go fast. So the lane reconfigurations, because the charter requires that they be shared at a MAC meeting, those are all shared at a MAC meeting. All the lane. So all of our projects in total, when we and you'll see if you guys look at the future slides, but the criteria that we developed tells us if something has a low, a moderate, or a high impact. If it has a low impact, it doesn't even have to be shared. My staff just recommend that I sign up on a checklist, like a permanent, things that are permanent though. The only thing that would be shared through email would be a moderate non-366, all 366, because it will have to go to a meeting. So it gets a little complicated, but the criteria that's in the charter completely spells it out. What is shared with the MAC, what is not shared with the MAC, definitely shared there. The one thing I want to say real quick too about the membership is so we were really specific about not having organizations be part because of the stakeholder forum. Stakeholder forum doesn't say like, we need to have a member from the Mobile Home Association and we need to have a member from the this, and that association is, it isn't like that. It's just open membership. It just needs to have a bike person. It needs to have a ped person. It needs a mobile home person. So we don't require that the participants be somebody like it doesn't, yes, OTA have somebody like, but if somebody else wants to join, we don't say you have to go talk to OTA. Like that's not so really anybody can, because of the open membership, anybody can join that they want to. And so sorry for the confusion. I think maybe what did confuse it is, one, we haven't had bike ped participation. I mean, we just haven't. And so then when we reached out to Jessica and she helped, and whoever else you guys were, I think also helping, but that completely helped us. We were able to get those people on board. And but then I think we reached back out after they left and we couldn't get somebody. So then we just reached out because there's nothing that says it has to be any specific person. So that probably was confusing. I'm sorry about that. The only other thing I want to say too is that we did have an exit interview, Donnell and I did, with one of the members that left, and understand some of the things that you're saying. And it's a difficult thing. And again, open to suggestions that because the only thing I can do is to tell you guys and to promise you that we share all of the feedback with the region, and that they aren't saying 4 against 2, these guys win. That's not how it works. And you can see even with the roadway, the stakeholders, like the freight stakeholders, were not wanting those roadway reconfigurations. They asked for changes, they didn't get them. So I mean, the only thing I can tell you is, it is a robust group, but it's usually pretty professional. There have been times somebody's going to say something every now and then that maybe isn't, then that sets somebody else off, but mostly it's pretty good. But if they have an opinion and if somebody's joining, they just have to speak it up, and we're going to document it. And we're going to give it to the region. We're not going to treat it differently. So and I've said it so many times, I don't know how. I just promise you. That's all I can say.
I think we have a question from Leanne, if we can get that in.
Hey, I just wanted to sort of reiterate, like, my apologies, but I do think it was a miscommunication around OBPAC appointing MAC members that represent PedBike. I don't know when it happened or how it happened, but because the MAC doesn't, the MAC has sort of open membership, I think that probably the miscommunication happened with like recommend somebody or help find somebody. But I think we had a miscommunication using the word appointment. So I want to apologize for that, because that's something that we weren't able, that happened a long time ago, and we haven't been able to kind of like clarify. So I just want to clarify again that I don't that I believe that was just kind of like a request for helping find somebody, although please feel free to disagree. Like, that wasn't the intention. The intention was that OBPAC was asking to appoint those members. That's kind of maybe a different topic, but I think it was a miscommunication. So I just wanted to, again, apologize for that one, Emma, and folks that were on back at that time. And feel free to reach out if you're like, no, I actually want to talk about this more. I don't think it was a miscommunication. I think we've just had many missteps since then. And
I think it is, and I admit we are different. The committee is a little bit different than what other ODOT committees look like, and so I get it, and it just, I'm happy to answer any questions though. If you guys do run into something doesn't make sense, please let me know. And Mavis, did you have something else?
I just wanted to say that it looks a heck of a lot better than when we were first introduced to the Mac. So
yay.
Thank you. Congratulations. It has moved very, very far. Yes, we want to continue being present and bringing our opinions to the table as well, but it looks significantly better than what it did.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, and hopefully the internal audit will make you guys feel a little bit better if you guys get a chance to take a look at that. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Feedback. And I think Dave is in the process of joining. So if we have any volunteers who would like to join the MAC, please reach out to us.
Yeah, and I'll certainly be reporting back to this group on how it goes. So
yeah,
we'll be involved and kind of see where we go.
Perfect.
Thanks, Dave. I think that'll be a good connection. And I think while OBPAC cannot appoint to the MAC, we can act as a resource, because we have previous success of, we can go out into the community that
we would love that.
Yeah. So I think that's
know the people. So that's great.
And if it's feels truly useful, then I think OBPAC can try and encourage one of its members to continue to participate, even though it's not appointed by OBPAC, so that we have a good back and forth between the two committees. So,
yep, absolutely.
Since we have a little bit of a time issue here, I'd like to propose we take our break sooner rather than later, unless Ian, you want to try and get in 15 minutes worth of info. Okay, so if we take a break now, it's almost 2:30, 2:24. Can we come back at 2:45? Is everybody good with that?
Guys,
about 2:40.
2:40.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you,
Perfect.
Oscar.
Thank you.
I don't think we'll have more than a minute for OBPAC business for that agenda item.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome back, almost everyone, I think. Dave, are you going to pick up with business? Oh, we don't have Dave yet.
Sorry. I think the next thing on the agenda is the audit, active transportation audit, isn't it?
I had offered to delay that to a future meeting to allow for more time for the mobility program discussion. And so if there happens to be time at the end of the agenda, I'd be happy to present then, but it may be best to just move forward with the agenda.
Okay, I think maybe we can fit it in at the end. We'll see how it goes. So, okay, so we'll move on to OBPAC business. Nolan is no longer with us, so we don't have any safe routes to school today. So, Emma, you've got the JTAC, Jurisdictional Transfer Advisory Committee.
1, we didn't meet. 2, I got reappointed to another term, and that's my update.
Perfect. Okay, there's 15 minutes. So time for a break. Oh no, wait, we just did that.
No. Okay, so do we want to go to the recruitment update, or Ian, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do the recruitment update. So just give me a second while I pull up my slides. Hopefully this works. Oh. Nope, that's not how you do it. Okay, can you see my slide deck? Great. All right. So for the record, Ian Davidson. This is my update on recruitment, where we are. And so to give you a quick little overview, we've talked about this a lot, but just as a reminder, we have an upcoming vacancy for one position on OBPAC that is, as according to the statute, a person engaged in the business of selling or repairing bicycles. We often refer to that as the bike business position, but the statutory language is a person engaged in the business of selling or repairing bicycles. So here's a quick glimpse at the timeline that we were operating under. So we publicly noticed the vacancy on October 9th. In your meeting on October 29th, you all empowered both ODOT staff as well as 3 committee members, Mavis, Andre, and Beth, to interview applicants. And then on November 14th, the advisory committee interest forms were due. We had received 9 interest forms by the end of November 14th, at which point we invited all 9 individuals to attend an interview on November 21st. Of those 9, 7 were ultimately interviewed. For the 2 that did not participate in interviews, we made repeated attempts to invite them to attend. We don't know the circumstances under which they chose not to attend, but we did make efforts to have them participate. So, as I mentioned before, we interviewed those 7 individuals, had a chance to meet with all of them. They were all quite impressive candidates, but ultimately we have a recommendation. The recommendation is coming through me as your staff, though it is informed by Mavis, Andre, and Beth, and their time with each of the candidates, as well as reviewing the materials that they submitted as part of their interest form. So their recommendation is to submit 3 names to the governor. However, they have a primary recommendation. The primary recommendation is for Brad Davis of Nomad Cycles. And then they have 2 alternate names that they would like to recommend of equal weighting. That the first is Becky Newman of Golden Pliers Bicycle Repair and Supply. And then the second is James Kelly of Cycle Portland. So their recommendation to OBPAC, or rather our recommendation to OBPAC, is to submit those 3 names with the primary name as the primary name, and with the 2 alternate names on equal footing, sent to the governor's office. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I expect that Mavis, Beth, or Andre would also be happy to answer any questions if there were any.
So I'm curious if all 3 of those folks were from the Portland metro area.
So yes, they are.
Okay. Not surprising, but just curious.
Are you sure Becky was?
I'm like 90% sure. Yeah. Mavis is
Okay.
not.
Mavis, you remember? I thought she was Ashland or something.
I'll
I have to
confirm
check.
in her one moment.
I think she was Portland. If she wasn't Portland, then she was Eugene.
She's
It
Portland.
was all west
She's
side.
Portland? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, if there's no other questions, that's your recommendation. Obviously, you all as OBPAC can choose to do without as you will. I would recommend making a recommendation today, voting on a recommendation today. As your staff, I will then draft up a letter, send that on your behalf to the governor's office, and then they can do with that as they will. I'll then encourage or invite whoever you recommend to apply through Workday, through the governor's office's online portal.
Can I make a statement? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to remind everybody that we're trying to make OBPAC look like Oregon, and Oregon is 50% women, maybe 51. And so if we have a choice between the 2 alternatives, I would like to up the female alternative on that basis. Also, I thought she was wonderful. But they are all wonderful. So we're very lucky. So that's all. That's my.
Emma?
Hi, what I wanted to say is I think we're fortunate to have such an incredibly good bunch of applicants there. I think it's very unusual to get that many super well qualified applicants. And good job to you people that interviewed them, and I agree with your selections.
So
Dell pretty much said what I was going to say. I will add
Yeah.
on that I am glad that the top recommendation is someone who works with e-bikes, since it's discussing a little bit about like how did this position get established on OBPAC to specifically have someone that's so niche within the realm of bicycles. And talking to some folks, hearing about the 1970s when the bike bill was established, 1971, that was considered the bike boom. And it's interesting to just look at some of the stats of the number of bicycles that were being produced and sold in 1970s, early 1970s, and then think about how that's declined and changed over time. And I feel like we're in a moment where e-bikes are the next bike boom, if we were to have a bike boom. So having someone who is engaged in that part of the industry in particular, I think is kind of a nice cyclical reminiscent of the origin of the position.
I love the historical context. Thank you for that.
I would like to make the I would like to say that let's go ahead and move this forward and present those three to the governor. Ian, can you take care of that for us?
Yeah, I would love a vote. So
I make a motion that we move this forward and Ian go ahead and present this to the governor's
I'll second that.
office.
okay,
Did we have a call for a vote? Doesn't one of the chairs have to call for a vote, or can we just hold our fingers up?
I seconded it, so I think that's a call for
Sure.
a vote.
Okay.
So,
I saw enough thumbs. Did anyone vote no? That is what I need to note down. Okay, and did anyone abstain? Okay, great.
And for the records, we'll note that Nolan wasn't present, so he wasn't able to vote.
Thank you.
We-
All right.
Did we still have a quorum, Roberto?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
okay, so we can move to the Transportation and Growth Management Program overview. Is Kathy still with us? There you are. Hello.
Hi, I am. So
I'm happy to turn the time over to you.
okay.
Roberto, does she have a presentation?
Yeah, we do have a presentation from Kathy. Kathy, I'm happy to share the presentation.
Sure.
Excellent.
Let's do it that way. Yeah, let's do it that way.
Fantastic. And just let me know when to move to the next slide, but I will share this here with y'all in a second. Fantastic. So you should be able to see the presentation now.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for sticking in and waiting for my presentation and not everybody cutting out and moving on to other business. My name is Kathy Klezak, and I'm a land use and transportation planner for the Department of Land Conservation and Development. And yes, that is a mouthful, especially when you add in that I am working with the Transportation and Growth Management Program. And I lead education and outreach projects. So the Transportation and Growth Management Program is a joint program, as was just said, between ODOT and the Department of Land Conservation and Development. TGM is one of the first programs to be a joint program between two different state agencies. So it's kind of a unique, it's a unicorn of a program. And it even now remains one of the few joint programs across state agencies. And we like to work together. The Transportation and Growth Management Program recognizes that land use decisions affect both transportation options and transportation decisions, influence land use patterns. So TGM encourages governments to take advantage of assets they have, such as existing urban infrastructure and walkable downtowns and main streets. Since 1993, TGM has provided funds and services to over 270 cities, counties, tribes, and transit districts. At TGM, we believe that land use and transportation are intricately connected, and you as bike ped advocates know that well. And that linking land use and transportation, TGM works in partnership with local governments to create vibrant, livable places in which people can walk, bike, take transit, or drive where they want to go. We guide all TGM-funded projects to follow TGM goals and objectives of providing transportation choices to create communities with balanced, interconnected transportation networks, not just for cars, creating complete communities of vibrant neighborhoods and lively centers, supporting economic vitality and growth by planning for the movement of people and goods, saving public and private costs, with compact land use plans and well-connected transportation patterns, and promoting environmental stewardship through sustainable planning. So this slide illustrates, we got to this slide a little bit early. No, go back. The other slide illustrates the collaboration between ODOT and DLCD that together form the TGM program. ODOT staff on the orange side manage the annual Transportation Growth Management Planning grants, which help local jurisdictions update their transportation system plans and integrated land use and transportation plans. These grants are awarded annually, and we'll get a little bit more into that in a little bit. The DLCD side, on the bright blue side of the slide, manage the TGM community assistance programs. So like education and outreach, my program, code assistance, quick response, TSP assessments, transportation system plan assessments, parking reform and management, and sometimes some other special projects. The DLCD TGM staff will take projects in the different categories on a rolling basis based on workload and project type, and those applications are taken all year long. So there is no deadline, there is no time frame. It's just based on what we have available as far as staff and projects. Staff from ODOT and TGM meet regularly to collaborate and assist on each other's project. So a little more detail on the planning grant side. TGM programs are primarily funded by Federal Highway Administration funds. The funds are then split into categories, such as the one for the TGM planning grants. TGM planning grants help local jurisdictions plan streets, land use that lead to more livable, sustainable, and economically vital communities. This planning includes increased opportunities for transit, walking, and bicycling. TGM planning grants must have a clear transportation relationship and produce transportation benefits. This doesn't mean just transportation system plans, though. A plan to link the location of future workforce housing to areas with good transit or bike paths is eligible, and so is looking at the transportation system and potentially adding a bicycle pedestrian master plan. Each year, Transportation Growth Management awards 2 types of planning grants. Category 1, which is a transportation system planning, to give Oregonians a range of transportation choices and meet requirements of the Oregon Transportation Planning Rules. And Category 2, integrated land use and transportation planning to promote communities that meet the needs of all Oregonians to live, work, and move. And that's the category that's a little bit more wide in general, that doesn't necessarily address transportation system plans. The TGM staff will determine the project ideas qualify for the category the jurisdiction applied for funds from. And pro tip, there is a pre-application period that happens every year before these applications are due. The pre-application period is in March, and then the applications are submitted in May and July, and they're evaluated and scored. This is done after being grouped by ODOT regions. So a Region 5 project isn't up against projects that are Region 1, which is Portland. They go up against other projects in their own regions. So we try to create some equity that way so that you're not competing against bigger urban areas if you were a smaller community. TGM staff help negotiate a contract in jurisdictions with the jurisdictions and consultants who will provide support throughout the project, like running public meetings, eventually drafting new TSP updates, TSP code amendments, documents, and things like that. So Roberto, you've gotten way ahead of me. So the TGM staff is there to support, especially smaller.
My apologies. Do you have it set up on a timer?
No, I
okay.
didn't.
Then there's someone else who's advancing the slides. Just let me know.
Okay, there.
Okay, excellent. My apologies about that.
That's okay, no worries. So TGM staff is there to help because more often we work with smaller communities that just don't have the capacity to do these projects. The TGM planning grant timeline, the next one. Okay, the typical timeline for an annual TGM planning grant starts with a pre-application that typically opens in early March, as I said, and closes at the end of March. But if you don't submit a pre-application, you can still submit an application in early May, and then applications are open until July. During the process, the time that the applications are available, TGM will host a live webinar to answer questions and give guidance on how to best complete your application. The webinar date is not the same date every year, so keep your eyes open for TGM Gov deliveries so that you'll know when these things are all happening. Dates to remember are March for the pre-application, and then May for the beginning of applications, and then they're due in July. Awards are announced every September. Projects typically have a 2-year time period from award to completion, and the total amount available to award hasn't been determined yet for this year. We all know why, but typically they're about $3 million. We'll see if that holds true for next year as well. Next slide. Here are some examples of different types of TGM projects beyond TSPs that we have done in the past. So the Independence Concrete Site concept on your left was a really big TGM project, and that was in Independence. And then they have recently also done a parking reform and management. And then the Harbor Nadeau Street concept plan for Portland was also a TGM project. Sisters Cascade Ave Quick Response Project, where they redid their downtown streetscape, was also a TGM project. And then we did Heritage Square in Bend, Astoria, there was a Safeway intersection project, Yahat's parking and reform. And we used to do a lot of speaker series with nationally known speakers from around the country or organizations like Strong Towns. So there's a lot of variety that can happen. So next slide. Community assist, a little bit more about community assistance side. So this is the DLCD side we're digging into now. How do you apply for a community assistance project? Because they're on a rolling basis. You reach out to us. We are also funded through the Federal Highway Administration monies passed through ODOT, and then they get managed on the DLCD side of the project. Because of that, we have a similar sort of process. So code assistance, quick response, parking management reform, TSP assessments, as well as education and outreach are all project areas that we have available. And each category of need has a contact person that staff from an interested jurisdiction can reach out to. And for example, we just start out with a conversation about a potential project, decide how it aligns with TGM goals, and whether that aligns with the project goals. If it's eligible, then we need a actual proposal from the city or jurisdiction with a resolution saying that they would support the project and TGM goals. Because sometimes those two things are a little bit harder to put together than you would imagine. After a proposal is approved, we negotiate a contract between the jurisdiction and a consultant who will provide support in certain tasks, like running public meetings, eventually drafting code amendment documents, or some projects can be done by TGM staff. So it doesn't require hiring of consultants. Those projects can range from a TSP assessment, which is the preliminary step to doing a TSP amendment, transportation system plan, or redoing a transportation system plan, or parking management plan, or a quick response project could also be creating a pedestrian plaza or looking at creating a link in a bike network. As TGM staff, we usually provide support to the jurisdiction just so that they can manage the projects and the consultants so that they are doing their piece, but not the whole project oversight. The end goal of most TGM projects is for a jurisdiction to adopt new or updated codes or plans. This is an example of a timeline for code assistance. I picked code assistance because it's one of the more complicated processes. So most of the other projects have a little bit less intensive needs to go through things. So shown on this slide, you'll see the code amendment process is kind of what I just talked about. We have the conversation with the pre-application, and there's an actual application, which is just an email or a letter saying this is the type of project, this is what we want, this is the goals that we're going to adhere to, and here's the commitment from our jurisdiction to follow through with the adoption of what the plan is that we would come up with at the end. And then we would move forward to see when and how we can move these things through the timing process. Next slide. So DLCD's Goal 1 of Oregon's land use planning goals calls for the opportunity for citizens to be involved in all phases of the planning process. It requires each jurisdiction to have a citizen involvement program that addresses each of these 6 points: opportunities for widespread public involvement, effective two-way communication with the public, the ability for the public to be involved in all phases of the planning process, making technical information easy to understand, feedback mechanisms for policymakers to respond to public input, and adequate financial support for public involvement efforts. So those are a lot of the things that the local jurisdictions are committing to supplying when we do TGM grants, because often it's the local communities that have the best connections and the best ability to point out who we should be connecting to. So that's a DLCD goal 1, and that is also a primary TGM goal. So in our mission statement, we restate it in a slightly different way, and we say, we support community efforts to expand transportation choices by linking land use and transportation planning. TGM works in partnership with local governments to create vibrant, livable places in which people can walk, bike, take transit, or drive where they want to go. So all of our projects include a robust outreach and engaging communities. Another important part is that we like to employ best practices along with meeting state laws. That's how we get to have things that jurisdictions can adopt into their land use plans and their comprehensive plans. So to meet this, their TGM goals like increasing walkability and pedestrian-oriented development, increased connectivity and access between developments for multimodal travel, encouraging compact development patterns with a mix of uses and more. For larger cities, sometimes this includes requirements that are mandated by state law, and for smaller cities, sometimes that just means that we work hand in hand to have them be able to work up towards goals rather than just meeting requirements. Education and outreach projects can vary from publishing informational projects, such as the Traditional Housing Choices Guidebook and poster, to hosting speakers in one location or in various locations across the state. Education and outreach can also include sponsorship of events, workshops, or seminars, the key being a connection to transportation in the form of a potential project or providing information to a specific or larger group. Eligible applicants, cities, counties, tribal governments, council of governments on behalf of a city or county, special districts such as a transportation district, metropolitan planning organizations, ports, parks, and recreation districts, and metropolitan service districts. So it's not just cities or counties that it can apply for services and grants from, grants meaning projects from TGM. Next slide. I know it keeps trying to advance before we're ready. So more examples of TGM education and outreach at work. This Transportation Innovations from Sweden was a speaker that came, this was before my time. I love seeing bringing in different perspectives on transportation from other places to inspire innovation in our area. This particular speaker, as I said, was before me, but if anybody's got some good ideas, we're open to discussing it. It used to be the practice that we brought in a lot of speakers prior to COVID. We don't do that so much anymore. I'd like to, it may or may not be something that comes back. Depends upon how we put it to use. Speaking at conferences is another thing that education and outreach does. The middle image is from a transportation lingo bingo card, which was part of a panel session at the Oregon Active Transportation Summit this last spring. I was part of a panel that created bingo cards using transportation acronyms, because sometimes we're all guilty of using those. Sometimes the same acronym means an entirely different thing based on the group that you're in. And so we use that to poke a little fun and learn some new language tools and break down some barriers to figuring out how different people can get engaged with transportation projects. Got our publications. Vibrant Downtowns is a printed publication, but it's mostly a digital publication that can be found on our website. We have several of them on there that are really useful in different ways. Let me know if you want some links. And then there's also publications that are available that kind of tie together how transportation and housing, which is a big subject right now, are linked, and how you can make sure that both pieces are part of the discussion. I have a background in doing transportation options related video interviews, something like like podcasts, and I hopefully will be adding some of those kinds of things to our repertoire, which can be repeated, reused, and is a sustainable way to provide speakers to smaller events on a repeated basis. So be on the lookout for some interviews and potentially some requests to be part of the videos in the future. So who do we typically work with? So we often focus our projects on smaller cities, as I've said a couple times, because they have less staff and capacity to do projects on their own. We then become partners by managing the projects with them to facilitate the work that they otherwise would not have the funds, personnel, or capacity to complete. So small projects are valuable projects. And what do we mean by small cities? This map is showing Oregon cities with populations of 10,000 or less, with the size of the dot relative to the population. This map is based on a 2022 PSU population estimate, so some of those numbers might be a little outdated. Quick quiz, does anybody know how many cities in Oregon have 10,000 or less population? You can unmute or put it in the chat. Any guesses?
A lot.
You're right, it is a large proportion. So 183 of our 241 cities are 10,000 or less, and 76 are under 1,000 population. So since 1993, TGM has provided funds and services to over 270 cities, counties, tribes, and transit districts. Of Oregon's 241 incorporated cities, 75% are small cities or cities with a population of 10,000 or less, and 76 cities with a population under 1,000. TGM funded projects often involve partnering with small cities because they have less planning staff and are the most resource and need of technical resources. Education and outreach is a flexible program with the ability to adapt to the current needs of the people in different types of jurisdictions across the state. Yes, next slide, sorry. Across the state. Prior to the COVID pandemic, it was common to do speakers that we have sponsored across the state and do workshop series. This has not come back as a practice, and I'm looking at ways to initiate projects that would have a wide impact and that are replicable and more sustainable. Since I have a background in creating videos, as I said, I'm looking at that as a venue to expand education and outreach's reach. I'm excited to see what innovative way I can find to collaborate with people to bring more education about the impacts of good land use and transportation planning together across the state. It sounds cheesy, but it's what I love to do about this work, doing good and sharing experiences to help others do good. Do you have a speaker, workshop, or other idea I should know about? Let me know. Happy to chat about it and see what we can put together. And that wraps up my presentation. I hope you understand a little bit more about TGM programs and education outreach projects and what they could be and how they can work for you and for our OBPAC's goals. If you have any questions, let me know. Happy to answer them if there's time. If not, you can email me. Email's on the screen, and I'm happy to get you the answer whether I know it or not.
I think Mavis has a question.
So my question, so tonight, as a birthday present, of course, Vallejo County is having to vote on accepting a bicycle pedestrian right away or not. And I think it's going to be a not. And it's highly contentious. Like everybody, like they were making jokes about people bringing guns to this thing and neighbor against neighbor, and it is all up in arms and it is horrible. So how can we go about not having this happen? What would you suggest instead of what is happening here?
Well, unfortunately, I don't know a lot of the specifics about that project. And once the horses left the barn, sometimes it's a little hard to reel people back from their emotions. So I guess messaging about how many people, what kinds of people, children are always good to talk about, that you're providing, by bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. That sounds like a foreign thing out there that who knows, it's those people that are going to use it. But by talking about stories about who this actually benefits, you might be able to reel back some of that emotion and get other people, even if they don't want to speak out about it, because if there's guns been threatened at the event, then even if they don't speak out, at least maybe they'll vote for the fact that they want safe ways for their kids to get around.
What I've seen happen a couple times in this area, I'm in Eastern Oregon, I'm not in the Western Oregon, is that it has been so contentious that the elected officials will not vote for a project, even though they themselves believe in it, because um, the there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of fear mongering and a couple really noisy people that are stopping great projects. So is there a way that we can kind of like, I want to get information out to people, but if the only result of getting information to people is that projects are stopped, um, I don't know if that's a good route. So
Yeah.
I just
Again, not really my wheelhouse because that's not a TGM, it's not my project, but I would say that as an example, one of the projects that was brought up in the MAC presentation that I'm familiar with because I live out on the coast is the Astoria Road Configuration Project. And while that was happening, people were up in arms and just horrified that that would even be considered. And as it has now been in place for over a summer, which was one of the things that everybody was panicked about, that it was going to create gridlock and all kinds of problems over the summertime. So now that it's been there for a lot of time, there are more and more people that are seeing, hey, this works. And it's creating a safe bike path and it's slowing traffic down without stopping it. So it is gathering supporters after the fact. So that doesn't help you before the fact, but sometimes the hand of the state coming in and making a decision that the local lawmakers aren't willing to stand up for is painful in the moment, and sometimes is the way that it's got to be
I
to be successful.
completely agree. The problem is it almost needs to happen more.
Yeah.
I
Kathy?
had a quick question. Yeah, so I love TGM and I recently put in for a quick response grant that I'm waiting for Bill Holstrom to give us the okay to do our trolley feasibility study. So I love the concept of helping us get capacity. What I'd like to ask is how can a small community that's not next to a big rail system, like in Portland, be part of this transportation, housing near transportation? Because our bus routes are severely lacking. And the trolley is just one way that we're trying to improve that capacity for our transportation system. But I mean, we got a long ways to go before we can commute large portions of people, especially for our workforce. And the housing issue, we're trying to build it, but there's got to be some way that we can participate in that momentum and the desire to do that for us smaller communities out here on the coast.
Congratulations. I think that, having the idea of using a trolley and wanting that to be a quick response program is a great idea. I think trolleys are a great way to get attention and get more people on public transportation that they don't necessarily identify in their mind as public transportation. And so getting public transportation supporters via this fun trolley ride while they're on vacation out at the coast is a great way to introduce public transportation to more people. What you're touching on is, again, a larger conversation. TGM is this big of the piece of the transportation pie. And transit funding is what you're really talking about, or innovative mobility funding is maybe a little bit bigger piece or another small piece to add to the pie. I know you are all aware of the transportation conversations that are going on around the state as far as the budget is going on, but all of these voices are important when it comes to how we talk about these things, and that we talk about stories. Again, it's who this impacts and who, not only now, but who it could impact in the future. And so we just need to continue to be vocal supporters of these kinds of things to make sure that that pie doesn't go away. And so TGM is this small piece of planning to actually get the funding for implementation, and all of that is an additional conversation.
Yeah, thank you for that. And can I just add that I would love to see a video with transportation planners out here at the coast trying to catch a bus ride. I'd love to see that video. I think it would be amusing.
Awesome.
And I think Beth has a question.
Okay, Beth.
All righty. So Kathy, I'm surprised we haven't met already, but I would love to take you out to lunch sometime. Where do you live? What
I
city?
live in Seaside.
Okay. Maybe I'll take a visit up to Seaside one of these summers. And it's just that our backgrounds are very similar. I am the local / planning rep. I have a degree in planning. I also have a degree in landscape architecture from years ago, and so I've been interested in urban design and planning all my life. And so I just want to say that I from the long view, I moved up to Oregon in '88, and this happened in the TGM. Talk about stuff like creating something like TGM was in the works in the early '90s, and I think Oregon was one of the first states to combine that, because before it was cities and then it was roads that ran through cities and nobody talked to anybody. And so Oregon is ahead of the ball game, was ahead of the ball game. Hopefully others have caught up, because it's great to integrate all that, and it's not cheesy. And I am definitely behind everything you do, and I just love that presentation, and I wanted to just kind of comment on how great it is that ODOT and DLCD work together. And I personally am very impressed with Oregon in general on how far ODOT has come since 1988 when I got here. That there is conversation about active transportation, that it's respected. And so that's my little comment on thing. We have come a long way. We have ways to go, and OBPAC is helping Oregon to get through, to get a little bit further. And I know DLCD and ODOT are too. So that's just a comment, really. I did have one question. I guess never mind. So just thank you for everything you've been doing and you will do. Oh, I know. Are you going to be having any podcasts or videos on the TGM website accessible that way, or is this a personal thing you're going to be doing?
No, this will be on the TGM website, and just a little peek behind the scenes for everybody here. The TGM and DLCD website is currently in a rebuild process, so the whole thing's going to change here really soon. And my goal for my piece of that is to make it a whole lot more user friendly and have some things that are more engaging and active for people to be able to look at and look for on the website. So heads up on that.
On their phones, right? Because
on every device. Yes, I want, it's supposed that. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Karen.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Kathy.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you. Very, very good stuff. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on, Ian and I have been chatting here, so we're gonna do Ian's active transportation audit presentation now, and we're probably not going to make it to the division update. Sorry about that, Leanne. But we really want to get this audit presentation. I think there's some good stuff in there. So, Ian.
Okay. Can you all see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So for the record, Ian Davidson, going to be giving you an update on the active transportation audit. So as a little bit of history, back in early 2024, ODOT audits conducted an audit of how ODOT is doing in building out its active transportation system. And the September OBPAC meeting, Leanne gave you an update on what was the start of implementation. So I'll walk through a little bit of our response and then provide you a 1-year update on how our implementation is going. But before we get to that, I wanted to provide a quick overview of what the audit kind of looked at and what it discovered. So I would strongly encourage you to take a look at the audit itself. It is in your packet. It's also available online. Well, I think it's a good read. I don't know if that's a universally held opinion, but I find it very informative. So these 4 objectives, and then on the next slide are 4 conclusions. These are summarized. I did my best to make them bullet points. Obviously, a full-blown audit is far more comprehensive. But the 4 audit objectives were to assess ODOT's 1% methodology, which we'll touch on in just a moment, assess ODOT's calculation of efforts to meet a key strategic action plan goal, assess how ODOT incorporated equity into key decisions, and then determine ODOT's progress in providing more complete bicycle and pedestrian facilities on the state highway system and identified barriers to progress. The conclusions, and again, these are high-level summaries. The audit is far more detailed, but it identified that limited funding and competing priorities for limited roadway space makes progress slow. There are also improvements to data quality that are needed to be able to build out the active transportation network that Oregon needs. They also noted that constraints will make it difficult for substantive progress to be made, those constraints being principally limited funding and limited roadway space. And then the final conclusion was that ODOT's willingness to make changes to funding allocations and providing more roadway space for bicycles and pedestrians will dictate success. And that's verbatim from the audit. So earlier in the presentation, there's a data piece, but a lot of the audit focuses on the limitation in funding and limitation in space. Earlier in our meeting, there was a lot of discussion about the Mobility Advisory Committee, the stakeholder forum, and there was kind of within that a discussion on space. And so given our limited time, I think I'm going to focus my presentation on funding, so the limitation in funding. So with that, like always, I'm going to go back to Oregon's Bicycle and Pedestrian Bill in 1971. So this bill was the nation's first complete street bill. It required that pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure must be provided under certain circumstances, primarily when a new road is constructed, reconstructed, or relocated. It also said, in quote, reasonable amounts shall be expended as necessary to provide footpaths and bicycle trails, end quote. And that's the language that they used at the time to what we would now call sidewalks and bikeways or bike lanes. And then it also has in that law that no less than 1% of the highway fund shall be spent in one fiscal year on the footpaths and bicycle trails or on sidewalks and bikeways. So what we think of as active transportation. So here's a quick overview of funding for the bicycle and pedestrian program. And now ODOT has several active transportation programs, funding programs. I'm focusing specifically on the two funding programs that are housed within the bicycle and pedestrian program because they are the primary sources of funding that go to fund construction on ODOT right-of-way, which is kind of what the audit is focused on. So Oregon Community Paths, which you all look at and make recommendations on, very, very little funding is ever going towards anything on ODOT right-of-way. I'm not sure I could even calculate how much is going on ODOT right-of-way. ODOT is not even an eligible applicant, for example, and so it would be a minuscule amount. Safe Routes to School Construction, another grant program. ODOT, on occasion, is an eligible applicant. In 2025, they were an eligible applicant. Of the, I believe, 31 million that was available in the 2025 solicitation, they received 7 million. And so that number will change. It's not like there's a set aside, ODOT shall receive 25% amount. And so that number fluctuates somewhat. So here, just to briefly orient you. So there are two types of funding that are focused on exclusively on bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure on ODOT right-of-way. And now there are other dollars that are going to build bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, but these programs exclusively fund bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. From state, it's the bicycle and pedestrian 1% set aside. So earlier, when I was reading the bike bill language, if you'll recall, there was the bit about 1% of the state highway fund must be set aside. That is this program right here. So 1% is set aside. This is roughly $8.5 million every year that comes from the state highway fund. This is an ongoing appropriation in accordance with state law. There's also federal funding. This is roughly $15 million per year. And I'm using estimates here because ODOT doesn't operate on an annual budgeting cycle. It operates on a 3-year STIP cycle. So the numbers will not align perfectly. So this federal program is Pedestrian Bicycle Strategic, also known as PedBike Strategic or PBS. And this is Federal Highway Administration formula, and this is not on ongoing funding. And then an analysis was conducted back in 2024 to look at what needed funding, what funding would be needed to build out ODOT's active transportation network. And it was determined that an annual funding expenditure of $115 million in addition to the current appropriations would be needed. No funding source was identified, but it was indicated that that would be an ongoing need identified. Dave, I see your hand.
Yeah, so Ian, can you clarify on the federal non-recurring line? So is that, does the fact that it's non-recurring because the federal money doesn't show up from year to year, or is it just the way that Oregon decides to allocate the money that they are getting?
Yeah, so I'm going to get the year wrong, but I think it was back in 2019 or 2020, the Oregon Transportation Commission allocated 55 or $65 million to this program, PedBike Strategic. And it was a one-time amount of money spanning several years. And so it was a one-time allocation of money. There was not a policy decision that it would be a recurring appropriation. This all predates me, so I'm not certain of if there was a discussion of an ongoing appropriation, and if so, what that discussion was like. But it is one-time funding.
Okay, so potentially the Oregon Transportation Commission could could decide to have an ongoing allocation out of their federal monies to work to do bike ped projects.
I believe so, yes.
Maybe that would be something the committee might want to think about, understanding a little better and potentially making a recommendation to the OTC to look at having an ongoing funding source given how the rest of this audit looks. And yes, I did read it. So I mean, it's going to take way more money than we're ever going to get, but we need at least some guaranteed. We need to figure out how to increase the amount of guaranteed money just so we can keep moving. I'd be interested in working on that if there's other people on the committee that are interested. I'd sort of like to understand more about how this money comes to the state, how it's restricted or not, and, what the state's options are, and then see if we can make an informed recommendation. Again, if other people on the committee think it's worthwhile.
I support you in that, Dave.
Can I add one just a historical tidbit? And happy to participate, Dave, in whatever way that I can be helpful to just provide context. But the last time that the Oregon Transportation Commission dedicated a big pot of funding to Ped Bike was when we created the Ped Bike Strategic Program, and that was a one-time investment, and I believe it was $45 to $55 million. And so that's kind of it's my understanding that's kind of been how it's done in the past. It kind of has like we get like a one-time investment at times as part of the process that was used to the STIP process, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. For that STIP, active transportation was awarded a certain big chunk of money, and with that money, we created the Ped Bike Strategic Program, which it was a one-time program. And then I think that was all I was gonna say. Oh, the presentations that you've been getting from Amanda Peets around the capital improvement program. She's been trying to communicate that ODOT's going to be using a different strategy for that, like long-term planning instead of every 3 years with the statewide improvement program, which is not an awesome way to do long-term planning, like in 3-year chunks. We're going to move to more of like a capital investment program. And so the reason why that's important is because it used to be OBPAC would kind of weigh in at each 3-year STIP cycle, the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, and this would change that. This would be now OBPAC would weigh in during the as part of the capital investment program, which is still sort of forming. So we're not exactly sure when that point is and how that works. So if Amanda ever says, do y'all want to update on the capital improvement program, I highly recommend we always say yes, so we can understand better as that's going on, how that's going to work and how OBPAC can play a role in that. Not in any way to diminish what you were just talking about, Dave, ways to make it more of an ongoing moment, but happy to provide more context when I can. So include me if you'd like to, Dave and Ian.
Okay, appreciate that.
I think there's a question from Emma. So waiting.
I just was thinking the same thing as Leanne and some historical context. I think was the IIJA Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act what then created the Bike Ped Strategic? Because we have an OBPAC letter that was sent to OTC in September of 2022, weighing in on that funding decision.
I'm gonna say yes and no. So the it was either 45 or 55, and I apologize, I can't remember, but that
55.
amount was 55 was before IIJA, and then
Yeah.
IIJA happened like right after that. So we were like, woo! Like lots of funding decisions happening all at once. And then OBPAC and PTAC, the Public Transportation Advisory Committee, sort of together weighed in on the additional IIJA or BIL dollars, additional dollars that came to Oregon. IIJA is the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And y'all weighed in there, and so for example, like Safe Routes to School got about $30 million from that investment. And some of those funds actually, because we were doing this Ped Bike strategic call for projects, we were able to incorporate some of those IIJA new investments into that Ped Bike strategic program for Safe Routes to School projects, or projects that benefit schools. So I won't go into the nuances, are something you might not be interested in. Happy to talk about it more or stop there. So yes and no. Some of those investments were included in the Ped Bike strategic program as a way to get those federal dollars out the door.
Yeah, I want to support Ian to keep going. Overall, we need a lot more money. OBPAC has played a role, and a quick request to staff in our Google Drive, the letters and memos folder looks incomplete. That's where I went to try to see, oh, what have we done on this 4 or 5 years ago? And I think some of the letters have been in the individual meeting folders, but it'd be really helpful to go through there and pull out so that we can more easily reference and say, this is how OBPAC has been involved. These are the things we pushed for. These were the times that we said, thank you, OTC. You allocated money. This is working. Let's do more of that. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I'm
Emma.
really interested in see if we can change the discussion from a, hey, here's an opportunity, maybe we can get some money, to at the OTC level, we've committed to doing this. Now we need to find the money this year. So, who knows? But that's my thought.
I just had a
Thank
quick
you.
question, if I could.
Yeah.
Leanne, I think maybe you can answer this. So you said we moved to the strategic capital investment planning, sort of to get away from the 3-year STIP. And I think the capital investment list is formed regionally. Am I right or wrong about that? And then if it's done regionally, how can this group sort of be effective on that overall moving things forward, so that things stay at the list?
Questions, and I don't actually have answers because it's evolving. The leads for that initiative are our planning division and our delivery and operations division, where most of our investment programs actually live. So I think it would be great to bring some of the capital improvement program folks back and be able to ask some questions and get some clarity on when and where is a great place to provide input for that and who. I think that staff can ask those questions as well to those staff that are running that process, and provide that information via email after this meeting. Also, I think it's an effective way to engage with ODOT to invite the different staff to come to OBPAC. So happy to try both of those avenues if that's, but I don't actually know the answer to that question. It's the long way of saying.
I like that idea to ask staff to reach out, because it would be nice if we could get to a point where we could be a unified voice on influencing or advising on what of all the projects have that strong bicycle pedestrian component that we really would like to see stay at the top of the list somehow. Or but just when we're in our role of submitting letters or advocating for something, it would be nice if we could pick and choose and give a united voice to some of those capital improvement projects.
I do know that the Oregon Transportation Commission weighed in on priorities at their last meeting, and safety really rose to the top, which can be one of the ways that we can improve safety is by improving the conditions for vulnerable road users. So that's there. I think there is an alignment there, but I think that because this is new and because it's still being built and because it's a transition, there's always an opportunity to get involved.
Also, so I know Mavis serves on her area commission on transportation. Does anyone else serve on their act? Okay.
Kathy does, Northwest Act. That's why I recognize her from the OBPAC outreach to ACT.
Okay.
So, hey, Kathy.
Yeah. I will. I'll reach out to the CIP staff and start asking good questions and come back to y'all.
Thanks, Ian. Sorry
Okay,
for
so
hijacking your presentation there.
So, Terry, you have a question?
I just had a comment, that so many of our population is 60 plus and will increase in the next several years. Mobility and fear of falling and actual falls is huge deficit in some folks as they're aging. And so successful aging enhances all of our communities because as I call it, deficient aging affects the whole community. And, just one person not being able to move or progress through a space can cause, the whole family not to be able to enjoy the space that, many folks are paying their hard-earned taxes for. So in order to really have the full use of the facilities that most of them have supported and paid for in all of their working years, we want people to be able to access these spaces as they're aging as well. And for us having so many olders and maybe lessening focus, for many people on children because they're not having them. They're busy living their life, but then if they have to, stop everything, can't go somewhere because all of a sudden, like, mom, grandma, uncle can't traverse the space even with a walker or a wheelchair, then, that's a huge impact on, all of our families and friends and community. So
Thank you for that, Carrie.
The person who had asked the question, earlier, Mavis, like, how can we, advocate for spaces without alienating people? All of us are hopefully getting older, and we want to be able to move and groove as we get older.
I love the framing of successful aging versus deficient aging. I hadn't heard that before. Thank you for that.
do we have time for the division updates, Ian? Was that part?
We certainly can. I have a few more slides.
Are we done with the presentation?
Okay.
Let me quickly
get into the good part.
Get into the good part. That's optimistic. Let's see here. All right, so we talked money. So I'm not going to read all these to you, but there were 10 recommendations from the ODOT audits. You can read them both in the presentation that is in your packet. You can read them in the audit that's in your packet. I think they're even in the memo that I submitted in your packet. Management, they responded to the audit. That's typical. They agreed with the 10 recommendations of the audit, and then in response, they developed 41 action items to achieve the recommendations. And then since then, so for the last year and some change, we've had an interdivision staff team implementing the audit recommendations, these 41 action items. And then every quarter we meet with the division administrators, provide updates, triage if there's any issues, and then problem solve together. And when I say that this is an interdivision team, so this is folks from Public Transportation Division delivering operations, and then we have assistants from the Office of Engagement and Civil Rights, as well as Policy Development and Data Division. So there's 41 action items to date. We have completed 25 of them. 10 of them are in progress, and we have not yet started 6 of them. That's not surprising. Many of these have a later implementation deadline, and many of them also are sequential, meaning that we have to accomplish step 1 before we can get to step 2. And in some cases, we have completed step 1, we're on step 2, but we have not yet started step 3 because we're still actively doing step 2. I'm gonna breeze through all these. So in the packet, I kind of gave you an update on well, you can see a lot of green. We've accomplished a lot of good things, a lot more work to do, but the discussion that I kind of wanted to touch on, I have these two questions. I don't know if we don't have a whole lot of time, but these are questions I would love you all to think about on funding. I would love you to think, what are the funding opportunities for pedestrian and bicycle initiatives for ODOT? Is it more standalone funding, kind of like we talked about? Is it leveraging existing projects, something that we do a lot? Is it making changes to project requirements? In other words, so the 1971 law required bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure to be built under certain circumstances. Is it beefing that up? Is that a different approach? Is that a better approach? And then for process, what are process improvement opportunities to building pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, considering limited space and competing priorities for users of the road right of way? So with that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any question. And I see that Dave has raised his hand.
So I'd like to make the comment that I think, not always, but in general, ODOT is doing a pretty good job of incorporating good bike ped design into major new projects. Not saying always, but in general. I think where we really have a problem is we don't have money to do things to fix the existing infrastructure that isn't part of any project and isn't going to be part of any project. And that's really where the huge shortfall is, I think. If, I don't know where the estimate came from for how much per year is needed, but, I think a lot of that is probably, hey, there's just all these gaps in the bike and ped networks that, we have no way of going after without new money.
Yep.
I think Beth had a question.
Yeah, it's a comment is that these are really good and big questions, and I'm kind of combining this discussion questions with what Dave wrote. I'm going to try and start an offline discussion of possible recommendations to the OTC on ongoing federal funding allocations for bike ped. I think maybe Dave, you talk to people about that offline. It can't be quorum, understood. And maybe I would love to hear what, after doing some homework and all this, your recommendations, more than what you just said, of like a direction that could perhaps eventually become a letter from OBPAC. It's just a thought to kind of put everything together.
Thanks, Beth.
And I don't want to be in that group. Love you, but don't want to be in the group.
I don't understand that. Kathy?
Emma had a question. Oh, okay. I just had maybe it's more, I guess it's a question. I'm not sure if it's leverage or project requirements, but maybe a suggestion when projects are in an area or in a vicinity of bicycle paths or structures that need repair or maintenance, that somehow they can be included, especially if it's got some kind of funding, some kind of grant funding or project funding that comes from transportation, so TGM. So I don't know if that's like the carrot or the stick, but if you're getting some funding of some sort that you are required to maintain, and this would be a little hard to define, but some bike ped, to maintain some bike ped infrastructure that's in the vicinity. But I would like to see this group come up with a letter that makes a formal request of what we think some funding strategies might be, how much we can research again, like Beth, I'm not sure I want to be in that group. I'm not sure that's my expertise. But if we could do that, I think it would be a good idea for this group to have a letter sent out. That's my comment. I think Emma had a comment.
I have a couple initial thoughts. These are big questions, so it's not a comprehensive answer. I think that requirements can be really effective, like having a stick and then having funding to actually follow through on that. That being said, recently I was in a meeting where it talked about how the ADA settlement is leading to a lot of investment of ramps to nowhere. And so that's an example of a requirement that is not doing a well-coordinated leveraging approach. And I think there's a wiser and more cost-effective way to achieve that type of outcome. I generally think that more flexibility within active transportation funding is good because then we can be responsive to the needs in the moment, and it's not as much cobbling together this puzzle piece with this puzzle piece to make a comprehensive project. I remember when we were down in Talent, Oregon for our in-person meeting, we had an example of, oh, wow, you can get a full complete street on an ODOT section of highway if you have wildfire relief funds and if you use other funding source, and if you have 5 other funding sources, and you can cobble them all together in a moment of crisis. And it's like, it should not take that to be successful in delivering a complete street project. So flexibility is good. I think once again, like maintenance of off-street paths is falling through the cracks. And standalone funds might be beneficial to have a bike ped, like active transportation bridge program. I think that there's quite a few TSPs throughout the state that there are barriers due to very real geographic constraints like rivers, where communities are waiting for there to be a funding source that is significant enough to provide the human connection across rivers or other terrain that requires a bridge, a larger investment. So that's an area that I'd like to see part of the conversation, but isn't the full solution.
Thank you. I'm taking notes on all that. All right. Well, I am well past time. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments.
Real fast before we adjourn, because I think that's where we're headed, correct? Just a reminder of we have a proposed meeting schedule. So March 4th, 2026 from 1 to 4 is the next meeting that I have from Roberto. So I hope that's correct, Roberto. No meeting in January. But otherwise, let him know any feedback on this proposed schedule. Otherwise, we can assume that's our next meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kathy. And those dates were also shared in your homework. So please take a look at your 2026 schedule and let us know if there's any conflicts.
And Emma, to your question in the comments, we don't have a date yet for the in-person meeting. We're going to figure out where to do it, and if there's we're thinking through what would be good for you all to see. So we did Central Oregon this year. We've done, the Mid-Valley, Southern Oregon. We're thinking through some of that. So if you all have strong feelings, please let me know. We're still in the ideation phase of that. And depending on where we go, I think that impacts the dates.
Seaside might be fun, I'm just going to say. The coast would be great, but I don't think we have a win in transportation to share, but maybe Seaside and Astoria do.
I've seen some bike lanes going in Garibaldi, and Florence had there's been stuff going on the coast. The Astoria project.
All right, if there's nothing else, I'm going to say we're adjourned. I can do that. My last official time.
Thanks, Kathy. And thank you for,
Yeah,
Oh,
thanks,
Mavis isn't
Kathy,
here. I
for
was gonna say we all have to say happy birthday. There she is.
There
Okay.
he is.
Can
Happy
we do one last thing?
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
Can we sing happy birthday for
Happy
Mavis?
birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy. Okay, nobody else. All right.
Have a good day.